Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first episode of Honestly Single for the year 2023. I'm so glad to have you all here. For everyone who has followed, everyone who subscribed, thank you so much for your viewership and your support. I've got some great content in store for you this year. I wanted to start out strong, but first and foremost, I just wanted to say Happy New Year. I'm just so glad that you all made it here. I'm thankful to have made it here. Personally, I really feel like, just making it to 2023, I've overcome some kind of great obstacle, and I just look forward to all that this year has in store. I'm purposing to accelerate and really do a lot of great things going into this year, starting with some great content. This past weekend, I celebrated my mother's birthday, so I've been in pretty high spirits, and this is actually a really busy weekend. January, this is a big weekend for both of my parents, because the thing is, my mother's birthday was January the 8th, and then my parents have their anniversary right in the middle of the month, and finally my dad has his birthday at the end of the month on January the 27th, which, unless I'm mistaken, also happens to be Mozart's birthday. But yeah, January is a huge month. It's a busy month, but I'm just happy to be able to spend time with family. I don't take any moment with them for granted. We have our ups and downs, our humps and our bumps, but at the end of the day, we are family. So, now for today's episode, I really wanted to talk about patience. For those of you who saw the first episode of Honestly Single, the very first episode, I broke my principles down, my core principles regarding singleness and carrying yourself dating-wise down into 4 comprehensive steps. We have patience, discernment, peace, and letting the heart win. And I'm going to talk about those 4 segments to open up this year. But first and foremost, let's talk about patience. So I wanted to start off by saying there's this great podcast that I've been following called Black Men Do Talk. It was started by a gentleman. He goes by the pen name Street Hymns. He does rap battles, and he's got some other guys on board. And what they basically do is they talk about, what they feel are long due conversations in the black community pertaining to relationships, spirituality, entrepreneurship, philanthropy, so many other different areas. And even though it focuses on those concerns within the black context for the most part, there's also some sound wisdom that really applies to everybody, men and women, regardless of your color, your creed, or background. They've just got some really solid content. But they sometimes lean heavy in the relationships area, and I know in one of their more recent posts, the title or the subject at hand was, "Can you trust the vibe?" And that's really what they wanted to talk about. Can you trust the vibe? And I know some of you might be asking, well, what do you mean by the vibe, or what did they mean? Well, when they were discussing can you trust the vibe, what they wanted to know is, just because things seem to be going great and they seem to be really sensational, you can have those lovey-dovey, goody-feely moments with your significant other. Like, can you trust that? But specifically, can you trust that vibe when it comes to moments of physical intimacy? How do you know when it's safe, to lean in for a kiss? When do you know it's okay? What can be considered consensual? They made the argument that sometimes women tend to act as if men have to discern this, as if they're telepathic, like they have to psychologically determine that. So, it's a really sensitive conversation, as you would imagine, and the women certainly gave their input. There were some women in the audience who got to issue their questions and their insights. And it was an interesting conversation overall, because it was controversial, as you would imagine, but the bottom line, for me to just take the time to summarize it for you all, was the fact that you actually cannot trust the vibe. And the reason you can't is because the vibe is subjective. There are different opinions and perspectives from both the women and men surveyed. They all interpreted different, moments. They just had different rubrics as to what could be considered appropriate, for physical intimacy, with your boo thing or whatever. But, my main critique of this whole conversation was the fact that I felt it was a little too narrow. When it comes to physical intimacy, of course, it's a wonderful thing. We enjoy being loved. We enjoy being cherished, and some of us, especially when that's expressed physically. But physical intimacy is just one little cog, one minor aspect of what makes a meaningful relationship. When I think of can you trust the vibe, I'm looking at the whole trajectory of the relationship, especially as one who's stewarding a platform which is intended to motivate people to date intentionally, to be thoughtful about the people they welcome into their lives and how they coordinate their relationships with people of interest. So when I think can you trust the vibe? I'm really thinking in terms of, okay, is this a functional thing in the long run? Are we really growing together? Are we truly on the same page? Is this someone who I could count on to really do life with for the long run? Is all of that feasible, or is this really, just two people going out to eat more or less? Because I think there can be a lot of consumerism, even in the context of relationships. We see it commercially, when we look at our advertisements, our sales, they're already running Valentine's sales right now. You stop at any local Walmart, for those of you who bother to shop there. But, really, are we just going out to have our taste of, whatever people say is the thing to get? Or are we really invested in the long run? And that's what I talk about. That's what I want to talk about today, because I think that it is important to really pace yourself, especially in the context of modern dating. These days, we lock eyes with someone and we assume that a relationship is in play. Oh, this is the one for me. He looked at me this way. I blinked once and he blinked twice in response. Or we got people, who are, trying to make romance in the workplace. Somebody gets pinched in the love handle and all of a sudden there's a little game of booty tag going on right in the office. Also, even in our online dating platforms, we're hooking up with people within 3 days of texting them, through an online platform, within 3 days of making their acquaintance. Everybody's already trying to come over to the other person's house and get it popping. But really, I just think that it is so critical for us to really exercise the time to figure out, who exactly it is we're seeing and who it is we're talking to. And again, that's something that you have to pace yourself through. I know that there can be a lot of miscommunication when people move to advance things in the relationship before its appointed time. I can tell you, even from personal experience, there was a time when, a young lady and I were vibing quite well, and she wanted to have a conversation about intentions, which I think is excellent. That's very wise for any young woman to open up or to coordinate. And I just said, sure, let's talk about it. So when I went to discuss things with her, I just explained. I was like, lady, look, right now I see us as friends. But in time, I would love to be a great boyfriend to you. As a matter of fact, I want to be the best one you've ever had, and I want to be the be-all and end-all. Let there be nobody else coming after me. And in time, I want to be the best fiance that I can be. And again, let me be a one and done. And ultimately, one day, I would love to be the best husband that I can be to you. But again, right now, I see us as friends, and I'm cool with that. And, we talked for a bit, and she had to pull away because she was busy with something, handling business on her phone or whatever. She came back in correspondence with me, and she just explained. She was like, hey, I don't feel ready or qualified for a relationship. And my response was, wait, how did we jump to relationships? I just said a moment ago that we were friends, but the reason things didn't end up translating well was because she was in an entirely different zone. She interpreted matters differently. We just weren't on the same page from the communication aspect, and some of that had to do with the difference even in our experiences, specifically our past experiences. But that's the thing about patience. It's not just a matter of time; it's also a matter of space. And not so much physical space as it is figurative space. And this is where I get to talk about, that old controversial concept that is the friend zone, which technically I would argue that the friend zone is fictional. It's not, a real legitimate thing when it comes to dating. I've even heard from some women, experienced daters, in their early to mid 30s, who argued that the friend zone is basically something that men contrive out of their frustration at rejection. So, they're fearful of being banished to this friend zone. Well, I actually had to agree with the women on this one, guys. And the reason I say that is because I'm honestly not convinced that the friend zone is basically, Hades or hell for men. It's not a place where women condemn men. If you're a guy out there right now and you're fearful of the friend zone, let me go ahead and tell you right off the bat, you're already there. you are already in the friend zone. Because the friend zone is a space shared by two people. It's shared by both people involved in the relationship. So if we have a situation where a man and woman are involved, they're already both in the friend zone at the start of the connection. And the friend zone is a great place to be. It's not a bad place to be at all, because it's a neutral zone where you can really take the time to do the research that you need to do to figure out if your prospective boo thing, if your personal person of interest, if your significant other, or not so significant, we'll see, is really the person worth journeying with in the long run. This is where you get to discern their heart, their attitudes, their habits, their perspectives on life, the philosophies that drive them, that govern their decisions. All of those things, you can get to evaluate them down to the very decisions they make, their relationships, even outside of you, as far as family relationships, professional relationships, just simply what they've been involved in. This is where you get to study them and incrementally, hopefully, if things work out, and if this is a person you see yourself trusting, hopefully grow with them. Because the friend zone doesn't always have to remain the friend zone. As intimacy between two people increases, the friend zone can ultimately become a place of deeper intimacy. The friend zone begins to contract, it begins to narrow as two significant others come closer together. And while they were once in, so to speak, separate compartments in the same zone, now they're becoming closer together, and it becomes a situation where, what's mine is yours, what's yours is mine. Two are becoming one, and even their belongings are becoming shared. So before any kind of, shacking or cohabitation manifests in the physical, as you develop in your relationship with someone, with patience and with careful timing, you can actually grow in intimacy with them until to the point where the two of you essentially become one and the same. You become an unbreakable bind, and you're basically inseparable by that point. And that's a great place to be. But again, let me emphasize the fact that it takes time. This is, this kind of chemistry isn't something that develops with everyone. There are some people you'll always be in the friend zone with. As a guy, and to my fellow men, if she rejects you, if she decides to go in a different direction, the friend zone is just simply going to remain the friend zone. It's never going to graduate into anything else. She's established what that space is meant to be. There's no potential for it to develop and manifest into anything else. And some of you, you may be of the mind where you feel motivated to leave the friend zone. You don't want to be friends with her anymore because you didn't get what you expected. That's fine. I actually, encourage you not to lose heart, and also to stay tuned, because I have another video where I even want to talk about that, because we get confused even when it comes to showing real love and compassion for another person. So I do want to talk about that, because you don't have to abolish the friend zone necessarily, but you could be comfortable with that, and then you could find someone else who, well, hey, maybe I could build better chemistry, with this other girl. There may be somebody who really appreciates what I have to bring to the table. But ultimately, when it comes to this matter, I just really want to emphasize the fact that, when it comes to this whole development of chemistry between two people, it's just something that takes time. You have to carefully water it, plant it. To go back to the whole room sharing analogy, there are times where you get to pay the rent. That's actually what we call a date, or just a gesture of compassion. Maybe you do something special for her on Valentine's Day, or you take her out somewhere, any given day or a weekend, and it helps to build your chemistry. It's almost like renewing your vows in a sense. You remind her that, she's special to you, or you remind him that he's special to you, and you're thankful for their presence in your life. And, that's a big refresher. It can be a big checkpoint in a relationship. It actually takes me to those, old arcade games, especially the racing ones. You guys have probably remember the cruising games, the Need for Speeds, the Hydro Thunders, where you had a limited time to reach a certain destination. But once you hit that checkpoint, that time was refreshed. You had more time to endure the marathon and to keep going and run the race until you reach the reward of the finish line. And, that finish line, that could be a lot of different things. That could, represent, marriage for some of you. Again, it could be a lot of different things. So some of y'all are just satisfied with a good night in bed, but there's greater potential for those who take the time to rate and really respect the other individual. So I just wanted to share that all with you. That was the main thing I wanted to talk about today. I think it's good to talk about patience, even going into a new year, because we can, in some cases, attempt to overachieve. We can attempt to bite off more than we can chew, and we may set goals that may be a little too big for us to get right off the bat. But you take down any elephant one bite at a time. And one last thing that I wanted to say, because I do have a message for both the men and the women. For the men, I just want to say this. Understand that it's never a good idea to judge a woman by her superficial traits. You really got to take the time to look at more than just the package she came in, because I guarantee you haven't found out all that there is to know about her. I just want to make that clear now. Just really take the time to evaluate her in every dimension, because beauty is a good thing, but it certainly ain't everything. And my second message is for the women. To the women, I just encourage you to understand that Mr. Right is not always available immediately around the corner. It will take time. It's going to take attention. It's going to take true focus. I believe that there's a difference for us all, but especially for young ladies, between doing what's popular and doing what's actually functional. So I want to encourage the women to date intentionally. Date with intention. Don't date culturally just because it's the thing to do. Just because, you feel like going out and being with somebody. I've seen plenty of that, but I do want to encourage you to date with intention. Save yourself and the absolute best of yourself for the right person, for the best person who's fit for you. So I just wanted to leave you all with that. Other than that, thank you all so much for taking the time to listen. I really look forward to sharing more with you. In my next episode, I'll be talking about discernment. So in this episode, I talked about being patient and waiting to see and understand, all that there is to know about that other person. But the other half of that is, so what exactly am I looking out for? What are the details that I need to be evaluating? So with discernment, I'll be talking about all of the things that you need to study, or at least a substantial amount of the things that you need to study to figure out if that person of interest is best for you. So I'll be talking about that next. But thank you all so much for your time. I wish you all an outstanding day. Also, enjoy the weekend and enjoy the weather wherever you are, even if it's not the most pleasant. But just be thankful. And other than that, I'll catch you all later. Take care.